Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 3 of the Institute for Black Justice's Freedom Summer Symposium. On day 1, the focus was on the past. Day 2, the focus was on the present. And today, that focus switches to the future. But before we get into the future, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Omari Emili. I am a father of 6 living in Spanaway, Washington. Came from a real messed up background, a lot of disadvantage. I was a young person who didn't have a lot of investment put into them. I was born in the mid 80s, March 1985 to be exact. My family lived in the Central District of Seattle. It was started out as a strong 2-parent household, but being born in the mid 80s in the Black community, we all know that crack cocaine wreaked havoc, during that time period. So within 5 years of my birth, my parents were getting divorced. My dad became a transient, and my mom ended up remarrying somebody else who was in addiction. So they weren't really in the position to meet my needs. The addiction sometimes can dominate your life. And that's why a lot of the time back in the day, they used to say it takes a village to raise a child. Sometimes parents will have things going on where we need other people to step up. So, I was one of those kids who was always in class showing disruptive behaviors based on the trauma that I had been through. This led to me always being kicked out, removed from my peers, always being suspended and things like that. And I became a product of the school to prison pipeline. As a youngster, I had a lot of negative influences around me, but not a lot of positive ones. Once again, there wasn't a lot of investment being made in me. So my character had became a little bit distorted based on the values that I soaked up from the people around me. So I learned about this bank fraud scheme once I was around 17, 18 years old, that a lot of people were doing in this area. And there were a lot of people who grew up like me, dirt poor, who, I looked up to them in certain ways because what I aspired to have was nice, shiny rims and gold chains and getting all the girls and things like that. And a lot of people were doing these bank fraud schemes. That's what they had. So I ended up jumping in and I thought I had a good run when I made hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm now driving BMWs and Mercedes Benzes. This was my vision of success, right? But little did I know it was actually a path to destruction. I ended up finding out that I had a warrant for my arrest, that I was wanted for 30 felonies at one time. And when I found this out, I ended up turning myself in, went through the court process, wasn't being offered any type of plea agreements, being told I'm looking at decades in prison for leading organized crime. And eventually I ended up pleading guilty as charged to all 30 felonies that I was charged with. So I went from having no criminal history to 30 felony convictions pretty much overnight. And, I decided at that time, look, I'm never going to go back to this life of crime. So I turned to education upon my release from prison as a way to change my circumstances. So I released at 23 years old with a GED, a Black man in America with 30 felony convictions. And, I thought I had no options in life. I thought it was pretty much over for me. I was going to be forced to this underground lifestyle. But eventually I realized that my GED opened the door for me to go to a community college and pursue education as a way to turn my life around. So I ended up enrolling at Pierce College in 2008, earned my associate's degree. And I was a dropout with a really rough K-12 experience. But I ended up enrolling at Pierce College in 2008, utilizing my GED. I earned an associate's degree in human services, substance abuse. Ended up transferring to the University of Washington, Tacoma, where there I ended up earning 2 bachelor's degrees, one in psychology and one in what's called interdisciplinary sciences with a concentration on self and society. Following that, I went to grad school at UW Tacoma, where I earned my master's in interdisciplinary studies. And my research focus was on preventing recidivism through post-secondary education. So recidivism is when an individual finds himself incarcerated, they release, they commit a new crime, and they go back. For me, I didn't want that to be a revolving door. As a youth, I had all the potential in the world to make whatever I wanted to be out of myself, but I didn't have a lot of people who were pointing me in that direction or introducing me to those possibilities. Unfortunately, it took me into adulthood after going through a lot of hardship before I realized that education could be beneficial to me. My experiences in college were far different than my experiences in the K-12 system. Upon graduating with my master's degree, I've worked as a faculty member at multiple different colleges, at South Seattle College first, also at Tacoma Community College. I actually just got hired to teach criminal justice at the University of Washington, Tacoma, and I'm going to be starting that in the fall. So, I feel like my life has come full circle, going from that situation where I was somebody who was neglected, abandoned, spent time in foster care, and really just, once again, had no one investing in me, went from that to investing in myself, and my teachers investing in me, my community investing in me, to where opportunities have been coming my way nonstop ever since. You know, while I was in grad school, I used a research method called autoethnography, which is where the researcher becomes the focus of the research. And that allowed me to start writing my story down. It ended up turning into a book called Transforming Society's Failure, which Carol purchased 25 copies of. I believe those might have been distributed to participants of this event here. So I hope you enjoy that. And, you know, I'm doing a lot of work in the community with youth who came from backgrounds similar to mine. I have a caseload through Pierce County Juvenile Court through their Pathways program, which are all young Black males that have, once again, have experienced things that I've experienced, and some of them are experiencing things way worse than I've ever experienced. So I want to make sure that I invest in them to make sure that they see the possibilities in themselves and know that regardless what you're going through right now, you're worthy of success, you're capable of success, and you're going to get there if you really want it. So that's the message that I really have for you guys today, is that we really need to invest in our youth. It shouldn't take for individuals like me to find ourselves in prison on serious felony convictions and then just find the motivation within ourselves to succeed. We need that village to come back. You know, it's not quite there right now. I can't say that that village is really there for our youth the way that it needs to be. We're not showing up in the ways that we used to. And there's a lot of different reasons for that, you know. I think people are responding to things a lot differently. Youth are really exposed to things that when I was a young person, I didn't have social media in my hand, a cell phone in my hand, where I'm being exposed to all these things that youth are exposed to today. So I just want to encourage everyone, if you have a young person in your life, they do not have to be your child, your niece, your nephew, any young person in your vicinity, please be part of their village and invest in them and make sure that you're doing your part in ensuring that they can succeed. Because we definitely cannot focus on the future without focusing on youth. And our investment in youth today is what's going to determine what our future looks like. Science, technology, engineering, math, spirituality, emotional intelligence, financial literacy, other academic topics, nutrition, communication, our real history. You know, these are all the things that youth need to be taught today that's going to carry us into the future. And we cannot rely on the K-12 system to teach them in the way that they need to be taught. When you think about different learning styles and things like that. So, you know, if we equip youth with the right skills, tools, and information, our future is going to be a bright one. So once again, I want to welcome you guys to day 3, and I hope you have a great time. I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Carol.
Oh my gosh. Omari. Woo! Andre, one of our design challenge participants, says that he read your book in 2 days. He could not put it down. And I actually have maybe 2 copies. If somebody really, really wants one, and you know, maybe you don't have the extra dollars right now to afford to get one, we're going to buy some more. But right now, I only have 2 remaining, and we'll make sure you get a copy of that book. If you really want it, send an email to instituteforblackjustice@gmail.com. We'll make sure you get a copy of Omari's book. We don't want you to miss it. Thank you so much. And thank you for being with us on this final day. Isn't it amazing, the talent of these young adults that are right here in Tacoma and Seattle? It's just amazing. First of all, the design challenge participants, and then we had 10 or 11 young adults providing the best of their gifts. What can I say? It's the gift that keeps on giving. So thank you so much for that. We're going to get right back now to the design challenge presentations. Chrissy Kimura is going to bring up Team A, and then we'll listen to feedback from our panel members again. We'll take, if we have time, we'll take maybe 5 minutes to have closing remarks from the panel. And then we're going to ask all of you, which of the 3 proposals do you think the IBJ should prioritize? Now, I want to make that clear. All 3 will have something in them of substance that we will probably want to do and take on. The question is, which one should be our priority for the next year? That'll be the question that we're putting to the panel, and we're going to put to you very shortly. So take it away, Chrissy.
Thank you, Carol. Let's give a big round of applause for Team A. We have Andre, Janice, and Malik here. Just let me know when you're ready to go. Move ahead.
You can begin. Hi, everybody. I am Janice Moore. I'll speak on behalf of Malik, who is not here. He was amazing to work with. And Andre, if you want to introduce yourself, go ahead before we get started.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm Andre Jimenez, says he, him pronouns. And yeah, really excited. Working with Janice and Malik was a really great experience, and thankful for the IBJ to give us the experience to dream big.
Yes, thank you, Carol and Ajane. Okay, we can move on, Chrissy. Okay, so we got to speak with two legacy builders. We got to talk to Alice Coyle and Wayne Williams. Our conversation was really impactful. I just appreciate the fact that they kept it real with us, and just were really honest and vulnerable with the questions that we had provided for them with their answers. Some key takeaways that really resonated with our group was when Alice had said, if we are not seen, we aren't, or if we're not seen, we're invisible. Mr. Williams quoted, the only thing standing between Black people and excellence is opportunity. Alice also stated, it is not just about today, but the future. We need to be more intentional about promoting diverse leadership. And last but not least, Mr. Wayne was really adamant about making sure America cashes their check. So making sure that they give us what you deserve. This interview helped us shape things into perspective when it came to talking about representation and how we need to be more intentional about creating more opportunities for people of color while cultivating a safe space for us to see ourselves thriving. Miss Alice was real adamant about this and just making sure not only are we creating more and new opportunities, but making sure when we put these Black people or people of color in these predominantly white spaces that they feel safe, supported, and uplifted and encouraged. Next slide. So our design challenge, the question that we wanted to tackle was, how might we gain control of how we are represented? We believe to control how we are represented, we must increase opportunities for Black leadership. Because of the lack of familial or generational experience, we have been blocked from dreaming about being elected into office. You see here, we have Miss Rosa Franklin, who was one of the first Black state senators in the state of Washington. Shout out to her. Next slide. So when we got to get together in person as a group, we all spoke about our dreams and what we are mainly passionate about. Some of the topics that came up were attainable housing, economic freedom, and representation. Some of the barriers to these dreams, of course, are income inequality, white supremacy, the funding of locations versus giving the resources or funding the people, and some of the ideas that we came up with to solve these barriers are to get, or how to get more students into college, the need for more teachers of color, supporting the unique housing needs of people of color. Next slide.
Actually, Chrissy, if we can go back to that slide for just a second. Awesome. I don't know about anybody else, but Janice's mic was kind of cutting off. So I just want to go through these ideas again, just to make sure that we got them. So some of the ideas that came up from our dreams and our barriers were, one, how do we get more students to enter college, realizing that education is one of the greatest vehicles for social mobility? And then the need for more teachers of color, both in K through 12 and in higher education. And how can we support the unique housing needs of this population? It's increasingly vulnerable to houselessness. And then lastly, how do we increase the number of people of color in positions of power? And so for anyone who came along with us on our journey, we originally were kind of honing in on this need for more teachers of color, especially after talking to Alice Coyle. Educational justice, is really a big passion of hers. And so we saw the need to increase the number of Black, specifically male teachers in the K through 12 system. And we were kind of workshopping ways that we could do that. Giving these students housing, giving them access to education, and then these wraparound services. And so that's what our real prototype was looking at. And then we got together after the session yesterday and began to put together these slides. And we just felt like we weren't doing enough. And we also felt like we are given this massive opportunity by the IBJ to reconstruct the dream and to really think big and to be boundless. And we really thought that we could amplify this and take this to the next level, realizing that all of the ideas that we were coming up with, we would need to include policymakers and elected officials in. So why aren't there more of us, people who look like us, people who come from our neighborhoods, people with our lived experience in these positions of power? If you can go to the next slide, Chrissy. So this is our prototype. It's, we just termed it qualify because a lot of times young Black leaders do not feel qualified to run for office, to take leadership roles in public service. I was interested in running for office and I met with a consultant and I was told that I wasn't qualified, quote unquote. And this person specifically said, young white candidates are elected based off of their potential. Young Black candidates are only elected based on their experience. And that's internal and external racism that we put on ourselves and that other people attach to us. And so this prototype is really a 3-month intensive, quote unquote, certification program, realizing that we have a long history of Black leaders, but just encouraging more young people to feel qualified, to feel certified to run is the goal. So first, that bottom tier, it's represented by a young brown baby crawling. We wanted to kind of work within this run structure. So young Black leaders ages 18 to 35 are nominated by community members. We think that this is really important because we want them to start off with community support. We want them to feel qualified first by being nominated by the community members and being shown that they can do this. Prospective candidates would be interviewed by the IBJ team. This process would serve as a way to introduce the idea of running for office to historically excluded candidates. Then we would go to the train stage. So young Black leaders are trained by legacy builders to develop solutions, identify leadership qualities, and gain community support. Young Black leaders will be exposed to Black leaders in Washington and across the country to learn the unique challenges and opportunities Black leaders possess. And then this last one would kind of be a handoff from IBJ to a political consultant or an outside team because IBJ is a 501c3. There's some conflict of interest with endorsing and election laws. So while IBJ can't endorse candidates, they will serve as a connection point for supporting these first-time Black candidates. So if we can go to the next slide. Alrighty, our action plan. So our primary actors would be Black elected officials. If we're not seen, we're invisible. As you saw earlier that Alice spoke on, we need to see that it's possible. I have a little thing, I want some audience participation here. So can you guys guess when the first African-American senator was elected? What year?
Mm-hmm. Are we talking US or state?
US.
Wasn't that recent? I want to say like I don't know. This is. I don't want to just put my foot in my mouth. I'm gonna just say it was recent. It was in Georgia. Wasn't that the first Black? Well, maybe not. Maybe not. I don't know. In this 20th century, 21st century.
So yeah. So we got 2004, 1867, 2021. It shocks a lot of people to learn that it was in 1870 was our first Black US senator, and it was from the state of Mississippi. Mississippi elected the first African-American senator. So after the Civil War, we entered into this phase of Reconstruction, and Black leaders began to get political and social power. But because of voting rights and the Supreme Court overturning the Civil Rights Act of 1875, Black people began to lose office. And since then, we have only had 11 US senators who identify as Black or African American. And so, you know, we saw that it was possible. And, you know, as I said, during the 1870s, more than a dozen African American men, many of whom were born into slavery, were elected to US Congress. It was a period of true representation that ended too quickly. Author Lawrence Otis Graham, who passed away a few months ago, said, "How gutsy was it for these guys not to just try to be elected, but to get seated and to actually demand equality?" And so I think, you know, if we're talking, you know, referencing comments that were made by Dr. Rowland this morning, if we're looking at systemic change, if we're looking at reversing the systems that have destroyed the Black family, that have set us in this capitalist structure that was not designed for our benefit, the greatest way to affect that is to get more of us into office. And so using Black leaders as legacy builders and showing us how to become leaders, how to run campaigns, how to come up with platforms, how to communicate with voters is highly essential. I also think that we need to engage our community college and university leaders. There's a lot of untapped potential sitting in classrooms. And these faculty members have a unique perspective and a unique social proximity to young, rising Black talent. I also think that we need to look in non-traditional spaces, such as churches, or with private business owners who recognize the young Black talent that they have and can help motivate them. And then, of course, our legacy builders. And campaign consultants, because we all need a good campaign consultant. Resources needed. So we would need consultants to kind of help formulate the campaign strategy, to really build this curriculum, and then the IBJ to support with the leadership development curriculum. We really think that it's important to do connections to DC because you know, oftentimes we're kind of in a weird social location in the country. We don't have like an HBCU. We don't have a long history of visible Black leaders. And so I think connecting them to the leaders that are here in Washington, the elected officials and the legacy builders here in Washington, but then also connecting them to others across the country would help benefit this cohort greatly. We need funding for programming and then expenses for travel. What does success look like? Greater access for young Black people in political or policy spaces. Young people see their unique ability to lead, make connections with legacy builders in the political space. And the real goal here is more elected officials able to create policies that address the root causes of the barriers facing Black people. As we were sitting here today, I was moved by Dearica's presentation. Like, Dearica, we don't need you in the law libraries. We need you down in Olympia. We need you down in Washington, DC, because it's exactly the lived experience that you have and your personal connection to these issues that will help you be an informed policymaker. And you know, no one is going to advocate for us the way that we will. No one is going to advocate for Black families like someone who is in a Black family or is supporting a Black family. And so we really thank the IBJ and the UWT team for really giving us the chance to dream and to think about, if we're reconstructing this dream, then we have to have seats at the table and in positions of power so that we can really affect the systemic change. Because if we're talking about policies that affect Black families, if we're talking about reparations like Team C talked about, that all happens down in Olympia, that all happens in DC, and in these spaces where we've been historically excluded. And so this program would uniquely open the door for candidates like Janice and myself and the other contestants here. We think that this really fits into IBJ's structure and mission. IBJ's mission is threefold: to be an advocate for fairness and equity, to be an accelerator of justice system transformation, and to be an accomplice to credible social justice influencers and the communities they serve. Advocate, accelerator, and accomplice. Those are all qualities that public officials have. And we really think that putting more leaders, not just at the national level, but if we're looking at city council, if we're looking at school board, if we're looking at several down ballot offices, we really think that this is the best way for us to affect long-term systemic change. And it falls into one of the 4 pillars of IBJ, which is young adult social justice leadership development. We think that this would be perfectly in line with their mission, and we look forward to your feedback. Thank you so much.